And now here's Spike Lee's Vietnam movie, which kinda feels like something that was already supposed to exist until you think on it and remember that Spike Lee is somewhat of a generationally in-between filmmaker, a guy who showed up as an indie young gun in the 80s just as the boomer film icons were cresting, but still several years earlier than the Sundance-based 90s indie scene that launched the era of Tarantino and Kevin Smith. In other words, a bit young to have been in Vietnam himself, but also not young enough to view it chiefly through the lens of glib millennial irony. As such, BLOODS is technically more of an old-age reckoning action drama structured as a heist and treasure hunt adventure, not dissimilarly from Triple Frontier earlier this year, also from Netflix, with present-day Vietnam as its setting and the surviving, now very senior members of an all-black infantry unit as its main characters. The setup: back during the war, the Bloods discovered a downed CIA plane smuggling gold bars meant to pay shady South Vietnamese guerrilla fighters and elected to bury it and come back for it themselves later. But a natural disaster and the death of their charismatic leader Norman ultimately rendered that impossible and the hiding place lost. Now, believing that a lead on its location has suddenly been rediscovered, they've returned under the pretext of seeking Norman's remains to reclaim the gold. Delroy Lindo, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. are the surviving Bloods, plus Jonathan Majors as Lindo's estranged son, who joins the team unexpectedly for his own reasons. Now, it's a simple, straightforward setup for a film that runs nearly 2.5 hours, but if you've seen a Spike Lee joint before, you know what that is and what to expect. Even well into his 60s, and who knows how much of Netflix money to throw around, Spike Lee has never stopped directing like he thinks he's never going to get to direct again. Every film is crammed to the margins with everything he could possibly think to say on the subject, so while you get a very solid, deliberately paced drama about elderly black veterans returning to Vietnam, coping with both ordinary and specifically extraordinary pains and ghosts of age and regret, that gradually turns into something more like a brutal action film at about midway through, you're also going to get historical asides about 60s black politics, actors all but breaking character and absolutely breaking the fourth wall, to monologue about the fakeness of other Nam movies, the erasure of the black soldier from American history, side plots about incidental characters and individual stories, and plenty of excuses to throw on classic records. These extras are the buy-in for the whole Spike Lee experience. Sometimes it works, sometimes it distracts, but they're what make the production singular and unique, and if they're not for you, there are plenty of more conventional versions of this movie, which clearly Spike Lee is aware of, as evidenced by the clever recurring gimmick whereby the shifts between the present day and memories of the crucial mission where the gold was found and everything went to hell are depicted by changing the film stock, color scheme, directing style, sound effects, music, acting, dialogue into that of a deliberately over-the-top 1980s canon film style Rambo knockoff like Missing in Action or something, with the Bloods mowing down waves of overacting Viet Cong extras with soaring music, huge explosions, ridiculous gun sound effects. It's a clever gag and it really works. And he does direct the hell out of it. Like, I could easily have watched, and I'm sure he could have made, an actual movie just like that. Clever also is casting the Bloods' fallen leader, framed as a kind of warrior poet who made it his mission to ensure black soldiers survived the war that the government really did not care if they did, instilled as men with cultural history, and generally is remembered by the Bloods and depicted in the film as a literal holy man, with Chadwick Boseman, who is of course a great actor, but immediately recognizable to audiences as the Black Panther, and here is repeatedly photographed using angles, lighting, and staging so similar to the same ones he gets from the Marvel movies that right from his first, "Hey, look who it is," framed by basically a literal throne and everything, that the visual shorthand of, "Oh, that's why they looked up to him. This guy was a literal superhero," is highly intentional as a visual reference. Because if you're gonna have pervasive cultural iconography, you might as well use it. Now, this is definitely a fine ensemble piece acting-wise, well balanced across the cast, but the bulk of it clearly belongs to Delroy Lindo. Always an underappreciated actor, he's iconic here as a profoundly tormented, deeply disturbed figure who effectively shifts between being one of the heroes and occasionally the primary villain of the piece. He's the Blood most haunted by the war, but also least willing to heal himself, a bigot who rages against immigrants, calls the Vietnamese by war-era slurs still, and taunts his friends by wearing a Trump hat into the jungle. And yes, he voted for him. It's a potent performance that goes to some dark, vulnerable places, and I hope people at awards time don't overlook it just because so much of it is so very uncomfortable. This is another really good movie, folks. I really only feel like there was like one subplot in the midpoint that kind of dragged, but it ended up being really necessary for the surprising places the plot ultimately goes. Great performances all around, again from Delroy Lindo in particular. If you've got Netflix, this is already sitting right the hell there, so I'm calling it a 9 out of 10. Definitely go for it.